Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera. It's been more than a month since my last video, and that's because we've had a very busy summer this year. We've had to go out and about and do a lot of things, and also we had our summer vacation, which we have just returned from. Our summer vacation this year was quite long. We decided to spend 2 weeks on our vacation, and this year we traveled to New York City. New York City is, of course, probably the top tourist destination spot in America right now, and judging by the crowds we saw while we were there, I definitely believe that. One of our first places to visit was Times Square, which was quite amazing. It was quite crowded, the huge video screens advertising the shows and movies, all the people there from different parts of the world. The tourists, the buses, the taxis, the bicycles, it was like a madhouse. And then all these characters, like superhero characters and Disney characters who kind of wander around and try to extort money out of you to get your photograph taken with them. Quite an interesting place, and it was nice to see it, but so much different from the last time I was there. My last visit to Times Square, there weren't any of these characters, so that probably gives you an idea of how long it's been since I was last in New York. While we were in that area, we happened to have tickets for the Harry Potter show, which my daughter really wanted to see. And I'm not as big a fan of Harry Potter as she is, and I wasn't especially keen to see the show. I didn't really have high expectations for it, but I was surprised at how much fun I had. It was actually a very good show, and I recommend it if you happen to be there. Other places we went, of course, we went to downtown where we visited the World Trade Center Memorial. It was quite interesting to see what this place looks like today compared to what it looked like during my last visit when the World Trade Center was still standing. We visited the museum underneath where the towers used to stand and looked at the sites. We spent a couple of hours there. My wife and I both have a lot of memories of that time, and it was a kind of a surreal experience to visit that site while we were in the city. And of course, we went up to Central Park where we wandered around and enjoyed the beautiful scenery and fed the squirrels and enjoyed absolutely beautiful weather. It was the weather was fantastic while we were in New York. I think it rained a little bit one night, but for the rest of our stay, it was sunny and warm, but not especially hot, not nearly as hot as Tokyo is this summer. And it was just wonderful. But anyway, I think I've spent enough time describing my vacation, so I'll go ahead and get started with the actual subject of today's video. There's going to be a camera which a few, or if any of you, have seen before, and this is the Cosina CSR SLR camera, which was produced, I believe they started making this camera in 1976 or so, and it was produced up until the late 70s, 1980. Not a lot of these cameras were made, but I'm glad Cosina made this camera because it's something which is a very suitable and even a relevant camera today. What makes this camera so interesting is, as you can see, I'm unscrewing the lens here, like you do on old Leicas and stuff like that. This camera, despite being a late 70s production camera, features the M42 lens mount, which was introduced in the 1950s and was quite popular in the 50s and 1960s. And all the way up, a few makers were still making up to around 1970 or so. The wonderful thing about this lens mount is that different makers from around the world use this mount in their cameras, and a huge variety of lenses were made which will fit on it. This particular camera doesn't have its original Cosina lens, but it works quite well with this Pentax Takumar 50mm f1.4 lens, which happens to be my favorite 50mm Pentax lens. You can use the old Yashica M42 mount lenses or Praktica, or there were just so many different lens options available for this camera. And that a camera accepts M42 lenses is not really a big deal, but when you find a camera this modern which accepts them, that is kind of a big deal. When the M42 mount was made, most SLR cameras, or all SLR cameras I should say, were fully mechanical with mechanical shutter system and everything. Most of them didn't have light meters, and they were quite simple, reliable machines. But of course, technology progresses, and especially in Japanese cameras from the the 50s to the 70s, and by the mid 70s, Japan had pretty much perfected shutter mechanisms and the electronic systems which can be used to operate a camera. And this camera features the latest technology which was available at the time, which was quite formidable in the late 70s. And is still actually quite useful even today in 2023. It's very nice to be able to shoot these old classic lenses on a much more modern body, which allows you to get the most potential out of them. So let's go ahead and take a look at the features, controls, and functions and how to use the Cosina CSR camera. We'll go ahead and start at the top here as usual. Over here we have the film rewind knob, which reminds me a little bit of the old Pentax cameras with the black arrow on it. With this nice handy pop-out lever, which makes it easier to rewind the film. Below that we have one of the great features of this camera, this switch here, which selects between two different light metering modes. We have AV, which stands for average, and we have SP, which stands for spot. So for general purpose photography, and like on a day like today in Tokyo, where it's a little bit cloudy and overcast out and the light level is kind of uniform, the average setting is going to give you an average light meter reading across the entire view, or across the entire focusing screen, and it will give you a very accurate exposure. But say today is a very sunny day, a bright and sunny day, and I'm at the park with my friends. There are a lot of trees and stuff, and my friends are standing underneath the tree and want to get their photograph taken. Now, if I use the average setting for this photograph, more than likely the light from the sun and the sky is going to cause the camera to underexpose the image, and though I'll get a pretty good bright image of the sky, anything under the tree is going to be hard to see. But if I switch the camera to the spot mode and I center what I want exposed in the focusing screen and then set my exposure, that part is going to be exposed. So I'll actually be able to see get a good photo of my friends standing under the tree on a sunny day. The spot meter function is really good, and this is something which a lot of modern digital cameras still don't do as well as some of these old film cameras did. Over here we have a shoe for mounting the flash, and of course this is a 70s camera, so it has a hot shoe. So you can use vintage flash on this, which will work with a hot shoe, or you can use even different ones which will use a PC sync system, and we have two different plugs here on the side. Over on the right side here we have the shutter speed dial, which you also use to set the film speed. This is very much like a Minolta SR series, later SR series, like SRT series shutter speed knob, but better. It's better because this camera has a really wide range of shutter speeds, all the way from 4 seconds to 1/1000th of a second, and that's quite amazing for an M42 camera. The shutter or the film speed is quite easy to set. You simply lift up on the ring and then turn it until you get the appropriate number in the film speed window, the number which matches the film you have loaded in the camera. Of course, here we have a release button which you depress to unlock the winding mechanism and rewind the film. Here we have the shutter release button, which kind of sticks up a little bit higher than you would expect for a camera. A lot of cameras kind of have the button recessed so you don't accidentally depress it when you're taking it out or putting it in the bag. But there is a reason for this, which I'll explain in just a moment. And because this button sticks up kind of high and is easy to trip, there's a very easy to use locking system, which is better than what you usually find on SLR cameras of this vintage. And just move it to the orange lock button, and that will prevent you from accidentally firing the shutter. Here we have a very Minolta SRT style film winding lever and a multi-exposure lever located underneath, a really good feature. And here we have of course, the film counting dial, which lets you know how many photographs you've taken. Moving to the back of the camera, we have the viewfinder window, and it's dovetailed on either side, so you can attach diopter lenses or an eye cup to it. When you look through the viewfinder, it's nice and bright and wide, and at the top there is an LED system which you use to adjust the exposure in the camera according to what the light meter recommends. I'll explain in a few moments how that works. Underneath here we have a film card holder, and also we have a DIN ASA conversion table, which few people alive today know how to use. And on the bottom here we have a 1/4-inch tripod socket, and we have the battery chamber cover. This camera uses ordinary LR44 batteries, so you don't have any issues trying to find batteries to make this camera work. And on the front here we have the self-timer lever with an LED, which kind of makes it a little bit easier to use. So I'll go ahead and describe now the functions of the camera and how it works. And that's what's really interesting about this camera is the operating system. So when you are trying to set an exposure, what you will do with this camera is you will wind the film and charge the shutter and then depress the shutter button halfway. And when you do that, it stops down the lens. And as the lens is stopped down, it regulates the amount of light which is hitting the light meter sensors, and the amount of light which that is the actual proper amount of light for the exposure you are trying to get. So what you do when it's stopped down is you can adjust your aperture and your shutter speed until you line up the center LED or light up the center LED in the viewfinder. When that lights up, that means you have the proper exposure. And then to take the photograph, you just push the shutter button the rest of the way, like so. It's a very simple system and very ingenious. I really like the way that Cosina designed this camera with its light metering system. One thing to keep in mind is that you should focus your image before you depress this light meter, or excuse me, the shutter release button, because when you halfway depress it, the aperture blades will stop down. That will allow less light to go through the lens, and the image will become very dark through the viewfinder and make it much more difficult to focus. So what you do is you focus first and then depress it, set your exposure. So, okay, it should be, if I have 1/400, okay. Okay, so a day like today, I would say 1/125th of a second at f8 shooting ISO 400 film, and outdoors it should be the center, it should be properly exposed, and go ahead and take the photograph. So a very good system, and if you're using these M42 mount lenses with a automatic aperture system, which of course this Pentax has, is quite simple and easy to use. Of course, not all M42 mount lenses come with this auto feature or auto aperture feature. Some of them are what we call preset lenses, and they use a combination of dials. There's a aperture limit dial, and there's an actual aperture dial itself. And when you are setting the exposure, you have to stop down the lens using the aperture dial, and then lock in that exposure by turning the lock dial. And then you would meter on your subject, with the lens wide open, and when you take the photograph, you have to stop down the lens. So you don't have the automatic operation with that particular lens like you would have with this, but the camera will still work. You just have to remember to stop down the lens manually when you are taking the photograph. Loading the film is simple. This has a very ordinary system for opening the film door. You're dropping your film cassette, push down the lever, stretch the film across, feed it into the take-up spool, and simply wind the camera until the film is pulled across and the teeth in the take-up spool are engaged in the holes in the top and the bottom of the film. So that's it for this camera. Being it's an M42 mount camera made in the 70s, it's not especially sophisticated or difficult to describe. I believe I have this camera listed for sale right now in my Etsy store, so if you're interested in buying a really cool M42 mount lens with a really nice Pentax Takumar 50mm f1.4. Please check out my store. This week I've added a lot of new stuff to my store, so if you want to see that, please check out my stores. I'll post links to my stores in the description below the video. I plan to be doing more videos now that I don't have to travel anymore. We don't have any more trips or anything planned until winter time after the snow falls and the ski season starts. I'm kind of looking forward to that because it's really hot this week here. If you'd like to see these videos, please subscribe. And if you like videos about old cameras and me talking about my travel experiences, please click the like button. That helps. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.